Mr. Babic, thank you very much indeed, sir, for taking time out and speaking to us here in WION. We just heard what the Russian President Vladimir Putin has had to say, where he said that giving the green signal for Ukraine to use long-range missiles to strike targets deep inside the Russian territory changes the very essence of this conflict. And what this means is that the NATO military alliance would now be in a direct confrontation with Russia, and that Russia would respond suitably to this. What are we to make of this statement?
Well, I think President Putin just wants to attract attention to the fact how dangerous this situation has become. Because when the Ukrainian missiles strike targets as far as Siberia, it's obvious for the Russian side. I mean, we have been living with Ukrainians in the same state for 400 years. Most of their military specialists have got their education in the Soviet Union. We know what kind of weapons they have. We know what kind of people they have. So it is absolutely obvious that without help or guidance from the United States, other NATO countries, it would be impossible for the Ukrainians to hit by drones or by missiles the targets which are hundreds of miles behind the Russian border. So obviously the Western countries are participating in the conflict, not just by sending weapons, but also by operating these weapons. So Russia has been tolerating this for a long time. But now when civilians are targeted, Putin wants to send a very clear signal. This is dangerous. This is something that not even Barry Goldwater, the most adventurous candidate for US presidency, even he didn't envision such a possibility as striking deep inside Russia and not expecting this nuclear power to respond in some kind of a very, very destructive way.
Now, there are obvious questions that crop up. Even if this confrontation and this escalation does not turn nuclear, does it mean that if Ukraine uses American and British supplied long-range missiles, then Russia can target the logistical centers that are located in NATO military alliance nations that are bringing in these weapons into Ukraine?
Well, I don't think President Putin would give such an order because contrary to what the Western press has been saying about him, he is by nature a very cautious man. But there are many people in Russia, including those having access to the media, who advocate strikes against NATO countries. And they cite facts which it is impossible to deny. Obviously, a lot of Polish towns such as Rzeszów, logistical centers, they are logistical centers for the arms used by the Ukrainian army.
Right.
The same is true about other countries. Germany is obviously producing weapons for Ukraine, and Germans even say they would place some of their military plants producing weapons inside Ukraine. So these people behave as if Russia would never respond. I mean, there's a very interesting contradiction in what the Western media says. They say at the same time that Putin is unpredictable, Putin is cruel, Putin is an aggressor. And then they say, don't be afraid of Putin. Irritate him, annoy him, provoke him in every way possible. He's not going to respond. So I see this contradiction very clearly because I read Western media in 5 languages, and in every language they have this dichotomy.
Mr. Babic,
I can tell
very
you that
quickly, because there are implications that will happen if Ukraine resorts to the use of long-range weapons to strike into Russian targets that are inside the Russian, in civilian neighborhoods. The question is obviously this: will it then make this war unpopular amongst the Russian civilians? How do you think that would, of course, have a blowback effect?
No, it will make the war people's war in Russia, because in the beginning of the conflict, most of Russians were concerned about the losses in the civilian population and even in the army of Ukraine. Now, when the Ukrainians have attacked a Russian region, Kursk, when they made so many strikes against Russian cities, the public opinion in Russia is finish the draw. Let's win this war, because obviously Ukraine is a danger to Russian civilians. It's not just an annoying factor for the politicians, it's a danger for civilians. So I'm afraid the West, when they say by bringing the war home to Russians, we will end it, the result will be the exact opposite. Just like when Russia brought the war home to most of Ukrainians, before it was just two regions, Russian-speaking regions attacked by the Ukrainian army. After 2022, all of Ukraine became a battlefield. It didn't make the war less popular in Ukraine. It mobilized Ukrainian population. In the same way, if Ukraine, using Western weapons and obviously using Western specialists, which means the West, not Ukraine, will strike Russian civilians, the war will become popular in Russia. Because most of the people will say, protect me, finish this war by a victory.
All right. I think you've made some very important points there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Dmitry Babic, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.